I'm here with Chris Oxley. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know anything you're working on, we'll get started.
Chris Oxley, Chrisoxley. I was born here in Beckley. I live in Charleston now. I play with the heavyset Paw-Paws. I've been in the band for about 8 years, with some breaks here and there. I can talk about how I met them in a minute. I've done some work with Black King Cole. I played sax for him. A few years ago, we played a bunch of gigs for a couple of years, and then I have the Chris Oxley Quartet, which is a jazz quartet here in Beckley, where we just play jazz covers. But the past few years, we've only been playing about twice a year since the pandemic. And then there's Holler Boys, which was my friend Scott McClanahan and I were used to write songs together and record them, and we talked last year or two of maybe starting up again, and we've had projects where you'd use music that he and I would come up with.
Yeah. So I mean, being in the scene for longer than a lot of people around here, at least, how have you seen that change, and how have you, what music have you seen go in and out, and how has that influenced you locally?
I don't know that it's influenced me, except for when I first saw the heavyset Paw-Paws. What's interesting is that when I left, my job transferred me from Beckley to Charleston. I feel like as soon as I left Charleston, really cool things started happening in Beckley. Part of that's because of the Beckley Arts Center, where I think it's a neat idea that if you teach music lessons to students who are interested in playing, pop or rock or country or bluegrass or jazz or indie, whatever it is, then they start forming bands with each other. And when they graduate, either they go somewhere and take those skills and ideas with them, or they stick around and keep those bands. And so you're kind of constantly maintaining a scene.
So, I mean, you talked about it, you said you'd talk about it later, but how did you find your scene there, especially with the Paw-Paws, which is...
Well, they were playing a gig at Tamarack, and I think it was like their arts festival that they do annually. And I just wandered over there just to see what was going on. I just had nothing to do that day, so I wanted to check it out. And I heard them, I think they were doing a Otis Redding cover. And I thought, and I knew they were younger than I am. And I thought, well, they, just from how they presented themselves and what they covered, I thought, and then the name of the band, I thought they have a similar taste to mine, which is good. They have good taste, and they have a sense of humor, and they obviously cared about music a lot. And I made it a point. That moment, I was like, I have to become friends with these people. So I emailed them out of the blue and said, my friend Scott McClanahan and I just had a 45 put out, because this is a long story, but I'll tell it. The publishing company that put out his book was in cahoots with Fat Possum Records. And so when they put out a special edition of that book, they included a 45 single of 2 songs that he and I recorded in my basement in Beckley years ago. And now it's like, now you can't get that record unless it's on eBay or something, because they only printed so many. And I told them about that, and then that piqued their interest, because they're like, oh, we could be friends with somebody who maybe has connections to a label or something. Anyway, one thing led to another, and we just started playing music together. Oh, and I told him I played sax, and they wanted some. Dave's a big Van Morrison fan, so they wanted to put some sax on the record they were recording very soon with Jerry Key. It just so happened, just like a few weeks later, Jerry was coming up to Beckley, and they started laying down tracks for what ended up being the oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the record, which is really embarrassing. It's got a number in it. I think it's where I'm on the spot. Anyway,
Genies?
Non-Genies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it 9 genies? Yeah, because there were like 9 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what it was. So you hear the sax on that record, that's me.
Mm.
But I didn't start doing keys till later, when I just kind of got bored with the sax, or where I was playing sax with the jazz group. I wanted to kind of push myself a little bit and start doing. I always wanted to learn keys a little bit, and I still don't. I don't have the right. I don't play correctly. You know, I'm just playing the notes that I think ought to be played, and teaching myself chords and voicings and transpositions and things like that. So that causes me to focus.
So you are newer to the keys there, and that just pushes you to.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been playing sax?
I've never had a piano lesson in my life. I've been playing sax since I was 12. Yeah, so fall of my 7th grade year. See, back then, public schools would. It was not long after that when public schools started introducing instruments at 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade. But for me, it was not until 7th grade. It was like recorders and flutophones up until then. But 7th grade, got my sax from Gorby's in Charleston, which is still there. There's still Gorby's. As a matter of fact, my brother lives next door to one of the Gorby kids. And I got an alto sax, and I started playing tenor in college. And then played Barry, actually, with the New River Jazz Band, which is where I met the folks in the quartet. Or I met Judge Burnside, and then his son, and a drummer and vocalist that he knew at the time. We formed the quartet, which was an offshoot of in a sense, the New River Jazz Band. The New River Jazz is still around. I just had to. I was juggling too many things. I couldn't play with them anymore once I started having kids. So, but they're still trying to keep big band music alive. And I played Barry with them.
So you're still, I mean, you know, you tell that story, and you're still sticking around playing with the Paw-Paws.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got those other bands that you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you say you know, your inspiration's coming from? Where are you voicing your different inspirations, and what are those inspirations that are playing in there? Because I mean, like, playing different instruments, it's obviously a big deal. You can definitely draw from different places, but
yeah, I think so. I think it depends on the song. For example, when Cold Love was a song that they had before we ever met each other. But when we do it now, or the last time we did it, which was 2 Augusts ago, I think was the last time we played it. I'm doing like a kind of a 60s keyboard organ type of sound. And so I would sneak in like the lick from the Animals, from one of the Animals tracks. Maybe it might be Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Like, I'll take that lick and I'll work it in there just as a reference. So it depends on the song and the chords at the moment. If I'm hearing something that connects to something else I knew, whether it's a Beatles song or Dylan or the Animals or the Kinks or an 80s track or something recent, somebody might suggest, hey, let's do that. Let's do kind of a Van Morrison thing. The flute part that we did on one of the newer songs, we covered Van Morrison's Warm Love, which has like a flute sound in it. So when they started doing this newer song, which I don't even know if it even has an official title or not yet, I started playing around with just flutes on a new keyboard, and both Dave and Tyler, reacted the same way, positive reaction. I'm like, well, if they like it, I think it sounds kind of neat. If everybody else is into it, let's just see where it goes. And then that's usually how those things work. It always starts with a what if. Well, what if we tried this, that, or this, or that, or this, or that, or it's always a question, How about we try this? Or what if you played a minor chord there instead of a major chord there? Lately, I've been playing guitar with Dave, and I can see him having fun with it because he's always said he's like playing with a second guitar player there. So I could see in the future maybe us doing more of that, where maybe it's songs with maybe fewer keyboards and maybe more guitar, or you have to bring in an extra person to fill out the keyboards. I don't know. It's up to them, because I always see them as kind of, it's their band. I'm in it, and I'll give them input and my opinions, but it's a little bit more democratic on maybe how something should go or sound.
So certainly,
but everybody's open, huh?
certainly not stagnant influences, but like, I mean, and even talking about here, you know, even switching some roles, playing guitar some, you know, seeing that, you just get to constantly see, kind of almost case to case, you know, what fits. It's active inspiration, not stagnant inspiration there.
Active, always active.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see a situation down the road where we were playing a show, and you have like me switching from 4 different instruments. You know, that's like that could be a possibility. But then, you know, in this last gig and this one song we did, you know, Tyler starts playing drums. Seth hops on bass. Katie moves over to keys, and I pick up a guitar. And Dave's the only one who's playing the same instrument. And that's interesting to me, that people can do that. You don't see a lot of bands doing that. I've seen your band do it. You know, you all have switched around, and I think that's there's something there where it keeps it fresh for everyone, and that's definitely not stagnant at all. And you know, I remember 16 years ago, maybe even longer than that. Well, it was about 16 years ago, reading how Arcade Fire would do that, how their band was more like a community. And they would just kind of move around on stage, and everybody would take turns playing different instruments. And who knows why they did it? You know, it might just be a practical reason. Somebody had a part, and so they were stuck on that instrument for a part. Well, but that left an instrument open that someone else then had to take up. You know.
And I mean, that movement, there's always going to be kind of a pecking order. You know, what am I most comfortable with? What am I best at? And that'll force you to try new things. You know, with me singing, for example. I'm not a trained singer. I'm not a gifted singer by any means, but it forces you to draw from new inspirations and to push yourself to try that. And with your band switching out like that gives you opportunities to learn. And I mean, pretty far into your music journey, I'd say you're still pushing yourself in that way. And you get new opportunities. And
maybe that's why I do it even more, because there have been times where I'm playing sax in a situation. Maybe it's a gig I just didn't feel right, or a set list that didn't feel right. I'm in the middle of the solo, and I'm thinking about what I need to buy at the grocery store. If I'm playing keyboards, I don't know the keys, or if I'm playing guitar, I've not played guitar live that often. I've been playing guitar as long as I've been playing sax, but I've not played guitar live as often as I've played sax, by far. So when I'm in those moments of keys or sax, I am forced to be in the moment. It's like photography. If you go out to Bridge Day, or you go hiking, or if you have this kind of scenario where you're walking into it with a camera and you want to be kind of like a documentary photographer. I did this once for Chili Night with a video camera. You're constantly looking for things to shoot, and these interesting images and these interesting ideas that forces you to be in the moment. You're not thinking about down the road, or you're not thinking about what other things you have to do. You're in this fixed moment, just like a song. You have to think, you have to focus on that moment, and that is freeing in its own way. It's freeing up different parts of your brain, and it's zen. It's almost consciousness. It's relaxation. It's you're very present, and I think that's a good exercise.
Yeah, I remember I was at a practice for the OIB before I was a member. I was very new to drumming at the time, and I was talking to their then drummer, and I said, how are you keeping count at this specific part? And he said, well, I don't really count anymore. And I was, it's so foreign to me then. I was like, how do you not count? Because I've been drumming for 3 months at the time. And then, as you go and you're freeing up new parts of yourself, you learn, like with keyboard, I can separate my left and right hands now, and it's just new things to focus on. And you do get to a point sometimes when you're not pushing, and there is that stagnant creativity that you're having, where you're not going to be trying new things, you're not going to be forcing yourself out. So that's, I see that a lot in heavy set Paw-Paws specifically, where you guys are constantly not letting yourselves be comfortable in what you're doing.
It could, and it may not just be like instrumentation. It's, one song sounds like raunchy country, and another song sounds like R&B, 60s R&B. Another song sounds like indie rock. And, if you'd have told me 20 years ago I was going to be playing a Rob Zombie cover at Halloween, I would have been like, what are you talking about? And it ended up being one of the most fun things I've ever played. I mean, I don't even know why. It was Dave and the wah-wah pedal and Tyler's performance and just, Katie and Seth having fun with it. Everybody having fun with it and you feeling that. And then you don't want to be the Debbie Downer. It's like, no, I want to be part of that fun. And it was fun. And I think it was me playing guitar too. So playing guitar with Dave. And we just had a blast with it. So even just like trying different genres so you're not boxed into a certain type of music. I recently made this documentary about for Mountain Stage's 40th anniversary, and they said in the doc, when I interviewed one of the founders and the executive producer, they said if we were any one type of music, if we were only bluegrass or only West Virginia musicians, we wouldn't have lasted 40 years. There's just no way to sustain it. And I think that adds to longevity and that adds to interest, because you're never bored in that sense.
So just, keeping yourself on your toes, right?
Keeping yourself on your toes, yeah. Absolutely, 100%.
And that's how you keep your creativity alive and don't end up burning yourself into the ground making the same album every 3 years.
Yeah, you've got to do it for you, number one, and maybe that's the most important. Now, when you're in a band, it's a little different because it's a little bit harder to only do it for yourself when you've got to be communicating with all these other people, and you can sort of feel it if one person's not into it as much as the others. But you still gotta satisfy yourself first if you're gonna have anything to give them. Plus, that's the audience you want to satisfy. If you're satisfying yourselves as a band, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. You'll attract those who are into it because you're into it. You cannot not do it. Now, you may not be selling 1 million records, but it's something. There's going to be a quality there that matters more than a quantity. So you always got to keep yourself on your toes, and you always have to service number one.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So thank you so much. If you've got anything to say to the world, let them know.
Listen to the OIB and the weather up there, and heavyset Paw-Paws, and local groups. Check out maybe if you're not even from the area, check out your local bands. Check out as many bands as you can. Go out, listen to them. Listen to them on Bandcamp. And I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say. Just stay open.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.